Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Second Innings Reflections. Suman and I had a great chat with Shrikant Sarthi last week. Shrikant has had multiple transitions in his career, so it was a particularly insightful chat. He talked about how there have been fairly strong influences of his family as far as the shaping of his life and his career is concerned. He had a very close relationship with his brother. His brother used to work with Britannia, as he told us, and his and there's quite a lot of the almost 20-year gap between him and his brother. So obviously, that would have been a huge influence growing up. And Shrikant's curiosity about brands and about wildlife in general was kind of built up around his brother and his experience with him.
Yes, and the brother definitely had a huge influence on him. What was interesting, when his brother turned 60 and he was turning 40 that year, they decided to take a trip. And because of which he left his company, he left Disney, which I thought was fascinating. And I think while he talks, it becomes evidently clear that he's a person who's always living in the now, right? He's in the moment. Um, he even goes on to say that if there is a time to do it now. Otherwise, you'll always be a kind of a fence sitter. To me, that shows a lot of self awareness. Yeah,
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
even reflect and say, okay, what do I want to do next? Hand on heart. That's the way he put it.
Hmm.
What do
Hmm.
I do
Hmm.
next?
Yeah.
And of course,
Eh,
to do that, he's always getting out of his comfort zone.
Yes, Shrikant was very, very candid that way, spoke very openly. And, he found always through his career that it was important to get out of the comfort zone. He said himself that he became very comfortable in advertising, very comfortable in Disney as well, very happy. There was no push factor, right? It was just that he wanted to take a leap, and he took a leap without knowing what's on the other side, created no plan B, no end point, along with his brother, went off on this journey for many months. It's just his whole approach was very, very driven by why not? Why shouldn't I try this? And then just
Yeah.
went ahead and did it, which was quite spectacular, I thought.
Yeah, he said the more we evaluate, the more we figure out ways why not to do it, which is really the why versus why not discussion, right?
The
Which,
classic overthink.
yeah, the classic over thing. And that helped him
Yeah.
to keep making those shifts. The other thing is, while he's making these shifts, um, it's not a spur of the moment decision. It's a very thought out, deliberate decision. Um, and to that point, it's he makes this distinction between having time for something and making time for something. So when he went on that journey with his brother, it wasn't like for 2 3 weeks, it was for 7 8 months. That was the kind of planning that had to go in. So extremely well thought out, extremely deliberate. And then when he came back from that trip, he said, I just happened to meet a friend. I had lunch with him. He was with in Leo Burnett. Then another party, he met another person who asked him, would you like to do something in India? And that got them started on a different journey. So every now and then he's talking about he's meeting somebody, but to me,
Yeah.
it actually talks a lot about networking, which he's doing
Hmm.
consciously and
Hmm.
consistently, right? He's having lunch with people, he's talking to different people, and that's how a lot of doors opened up for him.
Yeah, and he had this, like you said, open to opportunities, very interested in different perspectives. And when he was kind of deciding whether to do this journey with his brother, he met one of his old bosses, and with a little trepidation, worried that if he comes back, will he be able to get back into the corporate world and things like that. So his ex-boss just told him, "Tere ko kitna job chahiye? How many jobs do you want when you come back?" And he turned around and said, "You obviously one." So his boss said, "Ek to mil jayega." Which is, and even in the episode we talk about it, Suman, that it's such a distillation of a big problem into what is really a very small challenge. And I loved these little bits that he had to talk about in the conversation. Yeah.
Absolutely. In fact, this particular one, he said it was incredible advice. The fact that it could be distilled into something so simple,
Yeah.
and suddenly, the penny drops for you. And you're right, there
Hmm.
was quite a few of these one-liners which
Yeah.
made a lot of impact,
Yeah.
starting from the time where he tried to do engineering and he told his brother, "नहीं करना है मेरे को engineering." And his brother said,
Hmm.
"Mat kar," and that was the end of the discussion, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Whereas he was
yeah.
anticipating a lot more. When he decided to quit, he asked his wife. She said, "Just do it," right? Not much discussion. Um, and then somebody in Disney said, "Tu ek din coach banega," and that stayed with him,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So I really like this power of small conversations, those
Yeah.
little things, which connected really well, with what he had done.
And also these are bits that he's carried with him. It's just the story you tell yourself, and these are the stories he's kind of told himself over the years, and these are the things that have shaped him as a person. He also talked about how important it is to have partners in his journey, and he's right now, as we discussed, become a coach and part of a group of coaches, which he very, very strongly underlined as being very important to his current journey, because he felt that you can lean on each other, you can become support for each other. It also mitigates the risk. There's always a risk in a second innings journey, as you and I have talked about with so many people, and it mitigates the risk because there are multiple people involved. What I really liked, and this is something that I feel very strongly about personally, is that he is very happy in some ways to be in, to some extent, a follower mode. So he very much thanked his one of his partners who kind of started the process of this coaching group that he's part of. And he said that it was her idea and she kind of built it, and I kind of joined the journey later. And that follower mode can very often be a great part of a second innings process. He also talked about passion versus purpose, as you and I discussed subsequently, that he was one of the people who probably, in this passion purpose kind of nomenclature, has been very clear in his definition and how it affects his life. He's very clear that wildlife, birding is very much his passion. He also thought about, being a photographer, and he realized that being a wildlife photographer was his passion, but that's not what he wanted to be his purpose in terms of his vocation or whatever you want to call it, because he didn't want it to necessarily have an outcome and an end point. Whereas something like a purpose, he felt his purpose was to help people through coaching. That's something I'm sure you can identify with, because that's his purpose. That's what he wants to do with his life in terms of, on a day to day basis, while continuing to enjoy his passion of wildlife and birding.
Very true. I like that distinction and the fact that he's doing both. His passion continues to be being in the jungle, doing wildlife photography, birder as he calls himself. At the same
Hmm.
time, coaching gives him the real purpose of helping people. So overall, I think it was a splendid episode. We learned a lot. It
Yeah.
almost, when we first recorded, it almost sounded like there's not that much. But when we heard it, we realized, he comes across as a very humble, oh, just one thing led to another. But I think he's a pretty evolved guy.
Yeah, I think there was a lot beneath the surface, and I think we managed to bring that out through our conversation, and it'll make for good hearing for the entire episode for everyone.